I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, the Doodaroa people upon which this presentation takes place, and I'd like to show my respect to any elders past and present who are here today. Good morning. Today Jackie, Yolanda, Kylie and myself will be discussing MyGov and our meeting with the social worker associated with that organisation. MyGov is a continuously developing machine-like organisation that has become a one-stop shop aimed at providing services and support to the nation's most economically vulnerable. MyGov is controlled by the Department of Human Services and contains many branches such as child support, Centrelink and Medicare. The formation of MyGov as a financial benefits provider was preceded by a long history of Australian policy that was aimed to meet the needs of the economically vulnerable. Federation in 1901 saw the formation of the Commonwealth of Australia, and legislation in 1909 saw the creation of a national age pension, which would be the forerunner of social security benefits in Australia. During the Great Depression, a need for social workers within the Department of Human Services arose to meet the increasing demand on social security. Social workers were used to assess eligibility and needs. During this time, material aid was deemed more of a necessity than financial assistance and was reminiscent of modern-day America's welfare system with the use of food stamps. Over the last century, social ideals have changed, which has affected government and thus policymakers. The rise in neoliberalism, war, social trends, the women's rights movement, the 1967 referendum, and fluctuating economics are just some of the factors that have influenced change within the social security structure. The motivation for providing benefits and whom to has also changed somewhat. However, the primary goal of providing financial assistance to economically disadvantaged people has remained the same.
The Department of Human Services is the umbrella under which Centrelink operates as a division of MyGov, along with Medicare and the Australian Tax Office. Centrelink administers the payments claimed by clients who qualify under Centrelink guidelines for assistance over a very broad range of circumstances. Funding for Centrelink is essentially endless, being a federal government entity and having no restrictions on the amount of clientele that they can service at any one time. Funding is allocated to the Department of Human Services through the federal budget every year. This amount is finite, however, ultimately demand will dictate supply. For example, if there is a natural disaster, extra funding will be allocated by the Parliament to meet the immediate demand of clients affected by the disaster, such as a bushfire or a cyclone or major flooding. When asked, what is your budget and funding, the Centrelink social worker said the budget was changing all the time. She was not aware of what the exact budget was for the last financial year. However, she was aware that Centrelink was under budget. Having said that, there is a push from the federal government towards a more corporate model of business with a more managerial style of operation for all DHS departments. This puts more pressure on the staff as no new recruitment of social workers is taking place. Here is an excerpt from the 2016 budget papers relating to the Department of Human Services. The federal government spends over $172 million per year on welfare payments to clients. This in turn can be broken down into separate categories within the welfare budget. Most people think of Centrelink as only providing for clients who are unemployed. However, even within the department, welfare spending is broken down into subgroups. For instance, welfare spending also incorporates childcare rebates, maternity allowances, the pharmaceutical benefits scheme, to name but a few. The $172 million is not spent on unemployment and people looking for work exclusively.
Centrelink is part of the structure of the Department of Human Services, which is DHS. This was created on the 26th of October in 2004. At this time, they incorporated child support services. They are responsible overall for the welfare, public aid and health for the people of all Australia. Under this umbrella, they have Centrelink, child support, Medicare, Disability Employment Services and Australia Hearing, which it provides the hearing services. The governance is under the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth of Australia, and the Minister responsible is the Honourable Alan Tudge MP. public policy used to provide these services are the Australian Hearing Services Act of 1991, Human Services Centrelink Act of 1997, and the Human Services Medicare Act of 1973. At June 2014, they employed 34,757 people, and as we are concentrating on social workers, as of August 2017, they employ 700 social workers.
Policies enable the organisation to work within rules which provide guidelines for each service sector in the Department of Human Services, Centrelink. Department of Human Services acknowledge each person's right to complain or voice their opinions and provide a suggestion about the services offered. Policies have been implemented for complaints and suggestions to ensure the handling response specifically dedicated to complaints and suggestions, and the process is going through the right avenues. Policies regarding the complaints process enable the organisation to be aware of areas which need improvement. Social workers are regularly contributing to the development of social policy to address the broader systemic issues that affect communities, families and individuals. Social workers make contribution to social policy development in 3 levels. Micro, providing a service to the individual or family. Meso, reports and recommendations to senior management contributing to policies and legislations. And macro, writing case studies that have identified broader issues to be applied in the decision-making process for implementing policies. However, policies have limitations for workers regarding the way in which social workers work with their intel. Furthermore, due to the policies surrounding the type of work social workers can do puts restraints on ongoing casework, as this was discussed in the interview. Services considered will be around Centrelink payments and the social worker situated in Department of Human Services MyGov building. Whilst we have listed 27 different payments Centrelink offers, there is an accompanying 32 that clients may be entitled to one if receiving one of the 27 payments listed. Furthermore, there is financial assistance offered twice a year under circumstances where the client is deemed at risk if financial aid is not provided at the time of the crisis. It is important to discuss the relevance of social workers within the government organisation, as their job entails face-to-face personal interviews, ensuring the client's circumstances are addressed accordingly, and recommendations made for benefits if they have met the criteria or referred to other government and non-government human service organisations. Although Department of Human Services has currently 700 workers in the Albury-Wodonga MyGov building, it is the only one in Australia that has a permanent social worker on the premises providing face-to-face service. A social worker's focus is to ensure safety and well-being of each client identified as having complex issues or immediate crisis, access to financial support, pathways to education and employment, with a broader aim at strengthening communities.
Within the Department of Human Services, there have been many changes within the structure since 2004. According to the social worker we interviewed, these changes occurred due to the difficult and new demands that the Australian public required. Currently, there is a new restructuring occurring which will affect many people, including employees as well as the public. Changes in the digital space has had an impact on the geographical location where social workers are placed within the organisation. Currently, Albury is known as Zone 4 Victoria. However, the Albury MyGov office is being moved under the Vic-Tas footprint. This has required an understanding between Albury and Wodonga to follow for cross-border support. As social workers, we have our individual values, so therefore we're fostering the well-being of individuals, families and communities, as well as providing respectful and individually tailored assessments, support and interventions. The social workers we interviewed is a senior social worker or support manager, and identified that in recent years social workers have been given more autonomy with a focus on duty of care. This is linked to the broader societal issues and demonstrates that the culture of the organisation is constantly evolving to address the needs identified by society. Priority has been given to clients experiencing domestic violence, youth experiencing mental health issues and those affected by drugs and alcohol addiction. DHS currently employs 700 social workers in a variety of roles which are constantly developing. The culture is highly reflective of its bureaucratic structure. However, this organisation and the social workers within it still maintain and uphold the mission statement. And the mission statement for Centrelink there's the vision statements, is excellence in provision of government services to every Australia, and also the mission statement, connecting Australians to the services they need.
It is really important that when exploring a MyGov social worker's experience, we recognise the impact the structure has. MyGov has a bureaucratic structure which is inherently machine-like. For a social worker, this can be particularly frustrating as it can provide conflict between social work values and ethics. For example, the very fact that clients are called recipients can be seen as dehumanising. The increased influence of the corporate model on social services seems to aim to increase the distance between the service and the people accessing it. Due to the impact of increased managerialism upon service provision, there exists a constant pressure to meet set targets and goals efficiently. The system is at odds with this. However, current restructuring is aiming to increase efficiency by moving services online. Social workers now spend an increasing amount of time providing support online and via the phone. This has had both a negative and positive effect on workers by increasing service access, but at the same time increasing barriers. Identified barriers that can affect people accessing services and support include uniforms and even the desk the worker sits behind. These factors can reinforce a client's negative feelings of being just a number when accessing support, and thus increases the challenges for workers to overcome when building rapport. In 2016, there were 5,000 people who were left unsupported in Australia when accessing MyGov. In 2017, this became a target to reduce. Social workers were required to provide some sort of support and intervention. This was achieved, and as a result, the Department of Human Services reduced this quota to increase the casework intensity, which highlights an emphasis on effectiveness. The policies and procedures of the Department of Human Services has also had a major impact on social workers. They are exempt from other legislations that other social workers are bound by. For example, a MyGov social worker is not an official mandatory reporter. They are not required to report abuse in their professional role. The Australian political climate has prioritised an economic focus. This has led to cost-cutting within the Department of Human Services. Staff have not had a workplace agreement in 4.5 years and no pay rise in 4. Another stressor placed upon MyGov social workers is the conflicting pressure from the government and society. The implementation of the debt recovery program is evident of this. Social workers were placed in the middle of this issue and had to directly deal with this failed government initiative and the backlash from the public. There also seems to be a lack of adequate training for social workers in service delivery when working with diverse clients. The limitations set by policy, procedures and structures of the organisation on the role of social workers within MyGov can also be hard to juggle and often requires adequate self-care, which has been the focus of current training.
Does the Department of Human Services treat us with the dignity that all human beings are entitled to? The answer, according to the Centrelink social worker that we spoke to, is no. I don't think they treat staff or humans properly. Department of Human Services, you've got a number. We're humans. According to our source, service users were originally known as clients. This was then changed to customers, and now service users are known as recipients. When asked what she thought of calling people recipients, she answered, "That's dehumanising to me. We should be looking at calling them all people." She was also disparaging of the term customers, saying they were not paying for her services, which is what customers do. She went on to say that one of the best things about being a social worker was that social workers are allowed to document clients' names on the system, which is much more human and personable than a number. When asked if Centrelink would eventually go down the same track as the American welfare system, as a sort of user pays scheme, our source said she hoped not, although no one can predict what the future might hold for clients and staff alike. If we as clients are referred to as recipients and continually dehumanised by the DHS, I doubt that we would have any kind of voice within the organisation. Given my new insights into the workings of Centrelink, I'm not surprised that the client has so little voice in what is a huge and extremely diverse organisation. There is yet another restructuring going on at Centrelink, according to the social worker. The government seems to be focusing more on a corporate model of service delivery. This is never good news for any clients, as rationalisation of resources always means less to go around for those who are most in need of it.
Centrelink is a large downstream organisation incorporated along with other entities under the direction of the Department of Human Services. It's bigger than I thought. It was and doesn't do everything that I thought it did. Even though, as a client, I haven't experienced positive outcomes, it is apparent that the social workers actually try very hard to achieve good outcomes for the clients. Hugh and Waring discuss metaphors that describe downstream organisations as machine-like, and this is certainly evident of Centrelink and the way it operates. The organisation relationships with social workers are at odds at times, with values and ethics more at odds than in common. This can lead to conflict that is often not favourably resolved, and this can impact clients negatively.
Currently, Department of Human Services Centrelink is restructuring their support services available in areas of mental health, domestic violence, youth under 25, drug and alcohol, and suicide. Social workers provide a service for vulnerable people and to change policies regarding services and how support is offered. More so, the policies which need to be implemented to ensure better outcomes for service users or recipients as what Centrelink refers their clientele as. For example, social workers write case studies to be provided to senior service people as they can contribute to the decision-making processes regarding change and implementing policies to govern those changes that have been identified by Department of Human Service social workers. Without writing and distributing case studies by social workers, Centrelink wouldn't be able to provide support to young people and there wouldn't be crisis payments. It is evident that social work is a fundamental component to making change and implementing something that will help people. Service users can make a valuable contribution to improving the service of Centrelink by making a suggestion and/or complaints through the complaints processes available online, written, phone, or by contacting the Ombudsman. All complaints and suggestions are taken seriously and help to improve services offered within the organisation. Improvements to clients' experience can be enhanced by providing services at a face-to-face level. Currently, AB study, child support and carers payment are handled over the phone and online. Technology can somewhat be seen as a downfall in this area, especially when there are service users who don't have access to the internet nor the transport to access the internet, and on top of that are unable to read and write. As Centrelink is one aspect of MyGov online service, with the push to move everything online, this will be a significant disadvantage to people already struggling to access the online components of Centrelink.
In conclusion, it seems obvious that the structure, policies and procedures of the organisation have a profound impact on the social worker's duties. However, the positive and professional attitude of the social worker we interviewed will always outweigh any negatives imposed by the organisation, thus leading to good outcomes for the majority of clients. Thank you.